Raider Nation, what's going on? It's Mitchell Renz here, host of the Raiders Report, with a video that I am very excited to be able to do because, like the video, if you agree with this statement, I am done with the Pete Carroll Raiders, and the sooner the Raiders move on from Pete, or the sooner Pete decides to step down for the Raiders, we are going to be moving in the right direction. So coming up on today's show, I'm going to go through and I'm going to tell you all the Pete Carroll replacements for the Raiders as their next head coach in 2026 this season. Now, if you did not see, there's been a lot of rumors, there's been a lot of speculation about Pete Carroll being a one and done in Las Vegas, and Carroll is on the hot seat. And there are rumors right now that he could step down. That's very intriguing to me because I was told by the biggest source of all sources that Pete Carroll was not going to go anywhere after the season, but the Raiders did not anticipate that they'd be 2-8. The Raiders did not anticipate that they would be this bad compared to where they are, and now there are some conversations that are happening inside of that front office, and the front office is concerned of the way that this coaching staff goes. From the information that has been given to me, the Raiders are way more loyal to John Spagnuolo and the front office than they are to Pete Carroll and this coaching staff. And I know Carroll was the third option for the Raiders. They wanted Vrabel. They wanted Ben Johnson. And with this team being as bad as what they are, it would not shock me at this point if Pete Carroll was one and done. Quite frankly, I am hoping that Pete Carroll is one and done. So here, you guys can tell me, who's your dream head coach for the Las Vegas Raiders next season? You're about to get hit with a YouTube ad break. While that ad is playing, I want you to scroll on down, and I want you to give me your answer, because coming up here on the show, I'm going to go through some offensive coordinators. I'm going to go through some defensive guys, and then at the very, very end of the show, I'm going to give you a bunch of names of coaches that are going to be brought up but have no shot of being this team's head coach. Let's first start, though, with the defensive side of the ball, and these are coaches that are more defensive head coach options. I know I've sat up here before and I've said I would hire a young, innovative head coach in terms of being an offensive guy, but there are a few defensive guys that I would absolutely keep in mind. The first name, and to me, if you're going to go with a defensive-minded coach, I think the top name that I would consider is Jesse Minter, right now the defensive coordinator for the Los Angeles Chargers. And he's working underneath Jim Harbaugh. This Chargers defense has dealt with a bunch of different injuries. They have given up 20.3 points per game. That's seventh best in the NFL. He's young, 42 years old. Also, Michigan defensive coordinator, 2022-2023. That aligns with John Spagnuolo. That aligns with Tom Brady. And it was also a national champion. Plus, you steal somebody from your AFC West rival, and you steal somebody away from Jim Harbaugh. I would be on board with the Raiders hiring Jesse Minter. And I think Jesse Minter would be a better candidate than Pete Carroll. Let's go to the next option here. Brian Flores, the defensive coordinator for the Minnesota Vikings. I love Flores' philosophy of a defense because this guy brings the heat. He brings the pressure. And if you want a defense that's kind of the exact opposite of what Patrick Graham's is, where PG's more bend but don't break, Brian Flores is like, I'm going to make you freaking break. And he's been the Minnesota defensive coordinator since 2023, had some head coaching experience in 2019 and 2021. I will say the whole Tom Brady, Brian Flores, Stephen Ross situation was one that I was very unsure about. And I talked about it last offseason because was told that Flores does not have a good relationship with Brady. It seems like they have ironed it out, and it was pretty well reported last year that Flores and Brady have a good relationship from their time working with each other from 2008 to 2018. Brady was the quarterback. Flores was either an assistant or a coach on that Patriots squad. But that's a relationship, and it seems like they've got it figured out. Let's go to another very popular candidate. For me personally, if the Raiders want to go the defensive side, Chris Shula might be my other top candidate next to Jesse Minter, and it's because of what he's doing right now with the Rams, and it's because he's working with Sean McVay. Like the video, type me down below if you've ever heard me say, I would love to be able to bring somebody from a Sean McVay tree. And when you see what the Rams are doing, 17.2 points per game, second best in the NFL, and I believe they have the second least amount of money spent on the defensive side of the football. And he's worked underneath Sean since 2017. He's got some experience. I love that he's played a little bit of college football. You can tell that he's got it up here. And I think Chris Shula is going to be one of those next coaches that people look back and they're like, damn it, we could have had that guy. Give me Chris Shula. I would love him here in a heartbeat. Let's go to another name that I want to throw out there. Jeff Hafley, defensive coordinator for the Green Bay Packers. And there is a part of me that wonders, with all the rumors going on right now with LaFleur, their head coach, could this be their plan to maybe bring Hafley in to be the new head coach? Because right now, currently the defensive coordinator for Green Bay, one of the things that I respect that the Packers have done, and I think Raider fans will resonate with what I'm about to say, I think Green Bay has done a phenomenal job taking players from outside other organizations, bringing them in terms of a defense, and getting a lot of really good production out of that defense. Like, look at a guy like Keyshawn Nixon. Keyshawn Nixon's done wonders over there in Green Bay. Look at a guy like Rasul Douglas a few years ago. Did wonders in Green Bay. I just think that the Green Bay Packers defense over the past few seasons has done a really, really good job of taking players, turning guys that really don't get a lot of attention, and then all of a sudden have done really, really well. Jeff Hafley is a name to keep in mind. The next name I'm going to bring up here is somebody that the Raiders interviewed last season, and that's Steve Spagnuolo, defensive coordinator for the Kansas City Chiefs. I'll admit this would be a hire that I could see Mark Davis doing, because Mark Davis loves to hire the old guy with the resume instead of hiring the new, young, innovative dude that quite doesn't have the resume. Now, Steve Spagnuolo has worked wonders in Kansas City. My problem is, though, when he's been a head coach, he hasn't done a good job. Now, he's got a lot of Super Bowl championships as a defensive coordinator with Kansas City and with, some other franchises out there. But at the end of the day, I sit back here and I go, do I want Steve Spagnuolo to be my head coach? Probably not. But there is a part of me that wonders, if the Raiders decided to move on from the defensive-minded guy in Pete, could Mark go with his gut? And this would be a Mark Davis hire. It's not a hire that I personally would want to go with. Coming up next here, though, let's talk about the offensive head coach options for the Silver and Black if Pete Carroll steps down or if he's just outright fired. Here's one thing that I know. Pete Carroll, head coach of the Raiders, he's been ass. And if you want to put your butt on something nice when you're taking a number 2, I got the perfect thing for you. Shout out to our sponsor here, Tushy. And Tushy is an absolute game changer because you've planned your holiday lineup, you tracked your playoff odds, and gift-wrapped your roster, but still wipe like it's 1888. Using a Tushy bidet means you leave the bathroom cleaner than when you walked in. Every Tushy bidet easily attaches to your existing toilet without the need for additional plumbing. Tushy Wave instantly modernizes your daily routine and bathroom with super sleek seat plus 2 separate front and rear nozzles for the most complete clean. Tushy Bidet gives you 2-in-1 benefits, reducing irritation and preventing micro tears with soothing water instead of scratchy toilet paper or damaging wet wipes. Remember, a-hole is only a naughty word if you wipe. For a limited time, our listeners get 10% off their first bidet order when you use code CHAT at checkout. That's 10% off your first bidet order at hellotushy.com with promo code CHAT. I'll say this. I was a little bit skeptical the first time that I used a bidet. And I don't know if anybody has ever actually used a bidet. Raise your hand down below. It's a game changer. It's honestly, I think, perfect for the Raiders because I think using toilet paper in the year of 2025 is like putting Pete Carroll out there as a head coach. It's old and it's outdated. You want a new, young, innovative head coach? Go get yourself a bidet with Tushy. It's an absolute game changer. And, I think the perfect example I can give you is if you were outside with your dog, and it's happened to me where you reach down, you go to pick up a little bit of poop, and, oh, crap, the bag's broke, you get some on your finger. Do you go inside and just wipe it off with toilet paper? No, you wash your hands. So why wouldn't you wash your butthole? It's a better way to do things. HelloTushy.com/chat. Promo code chat. That link's down in the comments. It's down in the description of today's show. Hey, clean your butthole. Let's go to some offensive head coaching options now for the Las Vegas Raiders. The first name I'm going to bring up here is Josh Grizzard. And Bucs offensive coordinator in 2025 took over for Liam Cohen. I still think Baker Mayfield has done a good job. I think that that's a smartly ran organization. They got a good offensive line. They've done some good stuff there. He was also the pass game coordinator, though, in 2024. I bring up Grizzard because of his tie with Spytech. This would not be the hire that I would want the Raiders to do. Would I take Grizzard over Pete Carroll? Yes, in a heartbeat. Quite frankly, every single guy that I'm going to bring up here on today's show is somebody that I would take over Pete Carroll. Now, he did play safety at Yale. That tells me that he's a smart guy. Got to be smart to go play at Yale, which actually is crazy. This means I watched Josh Grizzard live in a game. I actually went to a Yale Lafayette game in Yale, one of the worst stadiums I've ever been in. It's honestly, the Yale Stadium is worse than the Oakland Coliseum, and it's not even close. But he also worked with the Dolphins from 2017 to 2023. Again, that's important because of the Stephen Ross connection and because of some of the players and coaches that we have on this roster. But that's a name that I'm going to bring up. Not somebody that I want, but somebody that should be on the radar because of the John Spytech connection. Remember earlier in the show when I asked you guys who is the number one candidate you want to be the Raiders' next head coach? I'm going to sit up here and I'm going to go, right now it's Klint Kubiak for me, the offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks. And you remember, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, I said the number one guy I wanted the Raiders to hire is Klint Kubiak. Kubiak ends up going down to New Orleans. The reason why I want Kubiak to get it going is because what he's doing right now in Seattle is what I want the Raiders to do on offense. I want the Raiders to go under center more. I want the Raiders to run the football more. I want the Raiders to run a balanced offensive attack that's predicated with getting the running game going and the play action going. That's what Klint Kubiak does. And he does it at such phenomenal level. 29.4 points per game, third best in the NFL, and he's a big reason why that offense is clicking. Was the offensive coordinator for the Vikings in 2021, Saints offensive coordinator in 2024, son of Super Bowl winning head coach Gary Kubiak. He's got a lot of ties, and I love that fact that he's got a lot of those ties. If Klint Kubiak wants the job, I'm giving him the job. Let's go to another candidate here that I think that we should talk about. It's an interesting name. Wes Phillips. What'd you say? Another son of Wade Phillips. And I think it's interesting because about 3 or 4 years ago, I had many conversations with Wade Phillips. And Phillips was somebody that Mark Davis mentioned. And Mark Davis was curious about bringing in Wade Phillips. And I remember talking to Wade and I had some interesting conversations. But Wes Phillips comes from some good trees. And Dolphins head coach in 2022, 14 years of coaching experience with Kyle Shanahan. And he worked with Houston, Washington, Cleveland, Atlanta, San Francisco. I'll say that's actually not even Wes Phillips. Who was that for? You say that was definitely for Mike McDaniel. I was like looking at him, I'm like, I don't even think that's the right guy. In terms of Wes Phillips, though, the reason why I like what he's done in Minnesota is because I know that J.J. McCarthy is a bad quarterback. And I know that he has struggled at quarterback this season. But to me, I think that that's more of a J.J. McCarthy thing. I look at what Sam Darnold looked like, and I think that he learned underneath Kevin O'Connell. To me, I look at Wes Phillips, and I look at what he learned underneath Kevin O'Connell. Kevin O'Connell comes from that Sean McVay tree. So because I saw the way Kirk Cousins looked in Minnesota, because I saw the way Sam Darnold looked in Minnesota, I think that because he's worked underneath Kevin O'Connell, because he's worked with some really good organizations and worked underneath some good trees, I would entertain the idea of Wes Phillips. I'm not saying he's the best candidate out there, but I'm saying I would rather have him than Pete Carroll, and I'd rather have him than Chip Kelly. Let's go to another offensive head coaching option, Mike McDaniel. And everything that I accidentally just said there, we showed the wrong card. That's on me. And I literally just Ron Burgundied it. Still employed by the Miami Dolphins, has been the head coach of this organization since 2022, and has been a Kyle Shanahan guy. And when you have worked with that many organizations, like Mike McDaniel to me is a good offensive play caller. I'll admit he does make me very nervous as a head coach candidate, but would I take Mike McDaniel over Pete Carroll? Yeah, you're damn right that I would. And I do wonder if you have a smart guy like McDaniel and you allow him to just be the head coach and you let John Spytech do what is necessary, can you get the most out of it? Because the other reason why I would entertain the idea of McDaniel is it would be really good for Ashton Genty. Because McDaniel showed, and he has shown, that even when he's been on a, let's face it, the Dolphins have been a little bit of a cluster the last few seasons, and I think that that's because they were stuck with the Tua Tagovailoa contract. But what they've been able to do with that running game deserves attention. Raheem Mostert, 13 touchdowns. Look at what Devon Achane has looked like. I mean, this is a really, really good guy that can get this ground game going. And if you want somebody that can get Ashton Genty going, I think you have to look at what Mike McDaniel has been able to show in Miami. So let me know down below. Would you prefer a head coach, if the Raiders move on from Pete Carroll, to be a offensive head coach or a defensive head coach? Pete Carroll is under the defensive category, so type O for offense, type D for defense. Let me know down below what you're thinking, because for me, I am on the offensive side. But if you want to add somebody on the defensive side, I'm looking at Shula and I'm looking at Jesse Minter. Let's go to an option here that's been brought up multiple times on the Raiders Report, and it's Joe Brady, offensive coordinator from the Buffalo Bills. I have been talking about Brady for many, many years, and I say that. You go back and you look at my Josh McDaniels replacements video. You go back and you look at my Jon Gruden replacements video. You go back and you look at any replacement video that I think I've ever done, and I bet you Joe Brady is in that show. And I'm not giving him all the credit because I know Josh Allen is an alien, and I totally hear you loud and clear on that. But I still think that, like, when you look at the talent that Buffalo has, not a lot of talent on that roster. Was the former Panthers OC. That obviously did not go well, which is kind of why I think Joe Brady fell off a little bit. But Brady worked with Joe Burrow in LSU. And I can remember the statement that was told to me many, many months ago about the Raiders loving C.J. Carr. And I obviously made a video about it last week. But with Tom Brady saying what he did about C.J. Carr and Joe Burrow, the part of me that wonders if the Raiders' plan is to truly try to go get C.J. Carr, I wonder if they try to bring in a guy like Joe Brady. But Joe Brady, to me, you want a young, innovative guy that can get this passing attack going. I think Joe Brady was a great, great option to consider. Let's go to another head coach option that you can consider. It's Brian Daboll, who was just fired by the New York Giants. And earlier when I was talking about Mike McDaniel of why you would bring him in, you would bring him in to get Ashton Genty going. The reason why you would bring in Brian Daboll is if, I'm not kidding you when I say this, if you want the Raiders to draft Mendoza, I actually think bringing a guy like Brian Daboll would be really good hire for Mendoza. Because Daboll did wonders with Josh Allen. And I need, if you plan on drafting a quarterback and you want that quarterback to develop, I do think that Brian Daboll is a good option there. Because even this past year, right? You can say what you want about Jackson Dart. Jackson Dart, the Giants looked a lot better when he was out there. If you want the Raiders to draft a quarterback this season, I think you could do a lot worse than Brian Daboll. Now, again, we could sit back here and go, do we make Brian Daboll the OC and then maybe he gets the head coaching gig? Like, I look at Mike McDaniel and Brian Daboll, and I don't think that those are two guys that are going to get a head coaching job. I think if the Raiders said, we're going to keep Pete Carroll, we're going to make him a CEO head coach, which literally means we don't have the cojones to fire him, but we're just going to make him the head coach, and whoever we bring in as OC is going to call all the shots. If you plan on doing that, the two names that you should consider are Brian Daboll and Mike McDaniel. Mike McDaniel and Brian Daboll. Sorry, I got way too ahead of myself. Next name that I'm going to bring up here as a candidate is Mike McCarthy. And this does go away a little bit from my, I want to hire a new, young, innovative guy. But I'll just say it like this, because people yelled at me last year when I said this about Mike Vrabel. Last year I said Mike Vrabel is a top 32 head coach, and I don't know why he's not employed. And as you can see, clearly a good head coach. I think Mike McCarthy is a top 32 head coach out there. Like, to me, there are not 32 people alive on this planet that are a better NFL coach than Mike McCarthy. And I know there was a lot of issues in Dallas, but I would say that a lot of those issues in Dallas were because of Jerry Jones. I don't really think that they were a lot of the times because of Mike McCarthy. And when you've given Mike McCarthy, I think, the tools to succeed, he's been able to show you that he can succeed. He's an offensive-minded coach. If the Raiders want to still keep somebody that's got that resume because they're afraid to bring in a young, innovative guy with this team, I would rather Mike McCarthy, and I would let McCarthy call the shots instead of Chip Kelly, and I would let Mike McCarthy call the shots instead of somebody along the lines of Pete Carroll. I know it's not the young name, but Mike McCarthy is a much better option than what we have right now. Here's another wild card name that Chugs is going to throw in here, and it's an interesting name, Cliff Kingsbury. I don't know if the Raiders would entertain the idea because of the way things went down with Cliff and the Raiders before. But we have to sit up here and give Cliff a lot of credit because he looked really good with Jaden Daniels. That offense looked really good when Jaden was healthy. I know they haven't looked quite the same this year, but because Cliff has ties to Dan Quinn, and I know that Dan Quinn and Pete are very close, but because Cliff did turn down this job, I don't know how it exactly would go down, but Cliff would be another example of somebody that I don't know if I want to give him a head coaching job right away, but probably could be the offensive coordinator. And I know that's not what Cliff's going to do. If he takes a job, he's going to take a head coaching gig. But I think it's an interesting wild card option to throw out there. Coming up next here on the show, let's go to the these guys are not happening list. And it's going to be names that, I literally just saw a super chat from Mark says Nick Saban for head coach. Nick Saban's not going to be coming out of retirement. And he honestly wouldn't be somebody that I would want coaching the Raiders at this point. So I want to give some shout-outs here to the Noti Gang, people that always show up and show out, and I feel like, what is the Noti Gang? People that are subscribed to the Raiders Report and people that comment on my Raiders Report videos first when they drop. So our Noti Gang from November 18th, Infidel, Kat, Daniel, Awol, and Dylan, I see you. Shout out to all of y'all. Greatly, greatly appreciate you guys being part of the Noti Gang. And if you want to see your name on a future video, hit that subscribe button and try to comment first on a video that I drop. So, the people of It's Not Happening, you can add Nick Saban to the list. Here is my top 5 not happening list. Eric Bienemy is going to be on this list because I always get asked about him. Due to his domestic violence past, he is not going to be somebody that the Raiders ever hire. I always get asked about Jon Gruden. Jon Gruden, to me, would be better suited to go to college football. And the reason why Jon Gruden would be a bad hire is because of how much of a disaster he was. Free agency, draft, trade. We're trying to go full-on rebuild, and Gruden failed as the Raiders head coach. I get people want to look at the way that they were playing before he got fired. I would just illustrate to anybody to look at what the Jon Gruden Raiders looked like on all of his years when you started and when you finished. They always fell off in the back half of the year. Why? Because Gruden wasn't innovative enough to be able to make those proper adjustments. Bill Belichick, not going to happen. I know the Tom Brady names are going to be thrown out there. Deion Sanders, not going to happen. Rich Bisaccia, not going to happen. Jack Del Rio, it's not going to happen. I hope that you at least see kind of where my mind is working right now if the Raiders decided to move on from Pete Carroll. And I wanted to just, again, throw out a bunch of different options. This list is going to continuously change every single time I do it, and I'm going to be making more head coach candidate videos because when more reports come out, with more news that comes out, and where I'm at right now, I'm out on Pete Carroll. If you enjoyed this video and you want me to make another video, I hope that, again, you hit that like button. You tell me that you made it this far. My personal favorite coach candidate videos are when I rank them from 10 all the way down to 1. If that's something that you want to see on a future show, the more likes, the more views, the more shares, the more hypes this video gets, that tells me that that's a video that you want to see. So if you want it to go down, you already know what to do.